Just a heads up, my throat feels a little weird, so if I sound weird in this video, that's why. Anyway, this week in Destiny, we have a lot to talk about, from that final shape teaser, which we will get to a little PSA regarding leaks and data mines on YouTube. A lot has happened since I last made one of these videos. And sorry about that, by the way, the Nuzlocke just took a really long time. But whether you're casual, a sweat, or somewhere in between, your opinion matters, so feel free to leave your thoughts on these topics down below, and who knows, they may even show up in the next video. Speaking of the next video, what would get you to play Gambit? I feel like most people like Gambit, or at least like the idea of it, but very few people actually play it religiously. So what could Bungie do, realistically or not, that would make you a little bit more interested in playing it? I'm genuinely really curious. I'm trying to breed my hognose snakes right now, and my boy Loki just took a shit on my girl's head. So I don't know if that's a good sign or... Anyway, before I get into the first main topic, I just want to give a quick PSA regarding data mines, leaks, and spoilers here on YouTube. Don't worry, I will not be spoiling anything here on the channel now or ever. But in case you're unaware, there's a data mined cutscene that I can only imagine will play sometime later this season that is being spread around on YouTube and social media. Now, I'm not here to police whether or not people data mine the game, but I do think this at least deserves to be said. And let me preface this by saying that I'm not calling out any one person or YouTuber in particular, but if you're gonna post a leak or a spoiler of any kind on YouTube or social media, maybe don't include the contents of the leak in the title and thumbnail of the video. I can't believe I have to say this, but that's kinda scummy. Even for someone like me and the majority of the player base that don't indulge themselves in spoilers, we still get this stuff in our recommended feed because YouTube pushes it to people who watch Destiny content. So if you're gonna post something like an end of season cutscene, maybe make the title something like Spoilers Season of the Deep Ending Cutscene, or Season of the Deep Leaked Cutscene, and at least blur the thumbnail slightly. That way, if it gets recommended to someone who doesn't wish to see that, they aren't immediately spoiled just by looking at the title, you know? But that's all I have to say about that right now. Anyway, first off, I want to just touch on that final shape teaser. I know everyone has been talking about this to death, and there's probably not a whole lot I can offer to this conversation, but holy shit, I was not expecting that to come that soon. I was actually editing the Nuzlocke as the trailer dropped, and I looked down at my phone, and I got a notification from the Destiny YouTube channel that said final shape teaser trailer, and the thumbnail was a picture of Cayde-6 with a seemingly very generic looking font. So I actually thought it was fake. I thought the Destiny account got hacked. It was just so wildly out there that I thought there's no way this can be real, and it was real. Look, I never thought that Cayde would return to the game. I know there were some people that were always holding out hope. I was not one of those people. Not that I didn't want him to come back. I'm thrilled that he's back. I just never thought he would for a myriad of reasons. But he's back. I'm happy. I don't know what this means for the game going forward. I don't know what this means about that area inside the Traveler, but man, I cannot wait to see what Bungie has in store in the final shape. One thing that's interesting though is if this really is going to be the new destination and the final shape, you know, inside the Traveler, which I can only assume this is inside the Traveler, this actually makes me less confident that we'll be getting a third darkness subclass in the final shape. And I know that may sound silly, but it would seem kind of odd to me if we're hanging around what I can only presume is inside the Traveler, unless it really is a portal to somewhere else, which is very possible, and somehow we discover a third darkness subclass. That would just seem kind of weird to me. I'm sure Bungie would find a way to write it into the story, but I don't know, that's just a little weird. But who knows, we'll see. Definitely a surprise. Moving right along into what is essentially the main topic of this video, I want to talk about Crucible. In particular, there's something I've been thinking about for a while, and that is the game mode Combined Arms from Destiny 1. Now, if you didn't play Destiny 1, Combined Arms was like big team battle from Halo. We had tanks, we had pikes, you could summon your Sparrow, and they were bigger maps. I can't remember if it was still just 6v6. I want to say it was 8v8, but I could be wrong about that. There were also turrets, and you could play either Control or Clash. And it was genuinely one of my favorite game modes, and I know a lot of people also really enjoyed it. So in the last one of these community videos, I asked you guys how you felt about Crucible, and I specifically asked about Combined Arms, because I've felt for a while now that Crucible is missing something. And if you ask me, it's missing that chaotic party game mode feel that something like Combined Arms or more crazy game modes could bring to the table. In my opinion, Destiny Crucible has kind of gone a little too far down the competitive route, even in things like Control or Clash, where sometimes things just feel more competitive than they probably should, outside of Mayhem and Team Scorched. But also, now that I'm thinking about it, back in Destiny 1, we had a game mode called Skirmish, which was literally just 3v3. Maybe I'm in the minority for this, but I actually really liked Skirmish. I thought it was kind of fun. I could just kind of hop on something that wasn't Trials with two people. I thought it was fun, I don't know. But again, maybe I'm in the minority for that. There's so much that Combined Arms could bring to Destiny 2. Even just vehicle combat, because vehicle combat in PvP is not something that we've had since Destiny 1, I believe. I don't think there's been any vehicular combat in Destiny 2. While vehicles aren't the main focus of Destiny, Destiny is very much about its gunplay, especially in D2 for the most part. I feel like there is space for that, especially in Crucible. You know, imagine you could hop on your Sparrow, drive around a pretty big map. It was bigger teams than just 6v6. Maybe they bring Drakes into it, and Interceptors and Pikes. Maybe even add in another vehicle like a flying type team vehicle like the Falcon, or a ground type vehicle like the Warthog. And I know it sounds like I'm just saying copy Halo, but we're talking about Bungie here, and big team battle in Halo is very fun. If you ask me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think this would also be a really good opportunity to introduce a capture the flag sort of game mode into Destiny. Something like that would work very well with Combined Arms. The only thing cooler than dropping a Nova Bomb on like a group of 6 people is dropping a Nova Bomb on a Drake or like an Interceptor. I think that vehicular combat just adds a level of depth to something like Combined Arms that you just will not find anywhere else in the Crucible. It also adds a lot of variety to Crucible just through that one game mode alone. And I feel like a lot of people who did not wish to play Crucible much or at all before that would dip their toes into it if something like Combined Arms existed. But anyway, that's enough for me. Let's see what you guys had to say about it. Personally, I feel like a more chaotic Crucible would definitely open the playing field to a larger variety of players, but would have consequences for the competitive scene. Overall, Crucible for me is kind of hit and miss, but I do feel that with the sandbox that Destiny has, a more chaotic Crucible would complement the sheer wackiness that this game can produce. And that's kind of exactly where I'm coming from on this. You know, Destiny is a very wild game. I remember there was an Asdacross video at some point in the last year where he was basically saying that the new abilities and the new overpowered shit in every expansion is what drives sales. Like, a lot of people that bought Lightfall probably bought Lightfall for Strand. You know, Destiny is inherently just kind of a wild and wacky game with a lot of wild things, and it's very hard to balance all those things. And I'm not saying it's difficult to balance it, so you shouldn't try, but I feel like if you just kind of start leaning into that chaos a little bit, like Lalifer says, it would probably have consequences for the competitive scene. And I'm not saying abandon balance, like things should be relatively balanced. But having a space like Combined Arms and other party game modes where you just don't really need to worry about balance anymore, I think would be a really, really good thing for the game. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Factor75. Factor75 is a service that provides you with fresh, ready-made meals right to your doorstep. In the last year or so, I've learned that life is really busy, and sometimes it's hard to find time to make something healthy every day for dinner. Factor75 makes this easy with a wide variety of nutrient-rich food that updates each and every week. Meal plans range from 4 to 18 meals per week, and there are even meal preferences for vegan, keto-friendly, and calorie-smart diets. Factor75 helps you to achieve your nutritional needs and also cut out fast food to get you eating and feeling better with less hassle. When you use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code FACTOR-SE37056, you'll get 50% off your first box and support the channel in the process. And a huge thanks to Factor75 for sponsoring this video. Milo A says, outside of Trials and Comp, I would rather keep quick play as chaotic as it currently is. I feel like making base Crucible more competitive has no point. I like the chaos and builds you can do in quick play, and would really miss them if it got changed to please the higher PvP players. So that's another thing. There are some players, not a lot of them, but some players who really just want Crucible to be as competitive as possible and as perfectly balanced as possible, which again, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I think Bungie also recognizes that if you lean too competitive, your Crucible player base is going to dwindle very fast. I mean, look, you have Trials, you have competitive, let those be the super sweaty game modes, and let the rest of Crucible be a bit more casual, you know? At least that's what makes the most sense to me. Nader Vader YT says, if I'm being honest, I would like a fairer, more grounded Crucible where every match feels engaging and I'm not getting my ass handed to me. Now, this is a whole different conversation, but it is important to think about. I know there's a whole debate on like the type of matchmaking, you know, skill-based versus connection-based and all that kind of stuff. I'm nowhere near well-versed enough to talk about that, so I'm not going to talk about it. Natty says, if Crucible had more chaos, I would definitely play it more. Not just like random chaos, but skilled chaos. The gunplay of Destiny is fun, but it's just that. A gun. Indeed. The last word says, since D1, I always took Crucible more casually. I do believe competitive is relevant, but it should be separated from the casual side of things, like with emotes not working in Trials, for example. I think both sides are relevant. Casual for those who want to play it every now and then, and competitive for those who live for it, as without it, Crucible would die for a part of the player base in one way or another. At the same time, I love chaos, but too much of it could be bad. I think all of it is about balance, which of course, you know, it's hard to argue with that. You know, personally, I do feel Crucible should lean more casual with the exception of Trials and Comp. I feel like those two things should always stay as balanced and competitively viable as possible. And I don't think anyone would really argue with that. But I do feel like the normal Crucible playlists could benefit from being a bit more casual and less sweaty. Ruby Algorithm says, I'm not big on Crucible and PvP as a whole. In fact, I tend to avoid it like the plague, so I'm very much on the casual side of PvP. I do think there's a balance between party type game modes and competitive, much like all things. I do favor party modes, and I think having more PvP party nodes, like One in the Chamber or Sticks and Stones from COD, would bring myself and others that typically avoid Crucible. I do recognize that I'm likely in the minority when it comes to PvP, and have ideas for modes for it, like a mode that gives everyone the same guns with the same roles and disables armor exotics. That way, everything in the mode is based on skill and not what's meta for the season. It could also be a nice baseline for people like me that gets tired of getting mowed down by an immortal. This isn't really specific to one side or another, but having a mode selection rather than a random queue like in D1 would be awesome. That instantly made me think of map voting, okay? I don't know how you all feel about this, but I think map voting in Destiny would be really interesting. I don't know how easy or difficult that type of thing is to implement, and I don't know if it would be good or bad for the overall player base. You have the ability to vote on the map that the lobby wants to play in before you actually start the game. Now, that does sometimes lead to, for example, in Call of Duty, since a lot of people really like Nuketown, whenever Nuketown is one of the options to vote for, GG if you wanted to play the other map, which can suck. But there are some maps, like that one on the Throne World that I'm for, Disjunction, that not a lot of people like, and I don't think many people would complain about skipping that map if it was in the rotation. Vexed RKP says, TLDR, what's the goal for Crucible? To be competitive or casual? In other words, COD-like or Halo-like. IMO, we need casual game types to balance out the competitive modes, and Halo has more wacky modes and playlists for everyone, from Infection, Griffball, CTF, etc. And what does Destiny have? Control, Rift, which was fun, but folk literally sent death threats to the developers. Yeah, and elimination and its variants. If casual, we would want something like combined arms and or have maps that are not balanced but still fun. It's funny that he mentions that because back in Destiny 1 there was a map, I think it was called Crossroads, where we had like grav lifts that went back and forth from one half of the map to the other, and we just don't really have that anymore in D2. We did used to have a map in D2 set on Earth, it was like Red Legion themed, that had these little Cabal man cannons, but nowadays we just don't really have much interactable stuff on the maps, which is kind of unfortunate because map interactions are just really fun and they add a little bit of variety even just to your basic gameplay loop. Corrupted says, and for Crucible, I think that having a mix of chaos and competitiveness would be great. Imagine combined arms with comp ranks and elimination and flawless and whatnot with an adept Scorch cannon. Okay, that might be going a little too far. Neptune says, my only request related to Crucible game modes is that Rift is not a competitive game mode. Whoever thought that was a good idea should be fired. I was playing competitive for the first time not that long ago because I wanted Rose. When I heard Shaq say Rift, I was hella confused. I was like, okay, I definitely just hit the wrong button. It's like, no way Rift is in competitive. Yep, Rift is in competitive, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not great. It's not that good. Cruento Rex says, I rarely dip my toe into Crucible, but like in most PvP stuff I delve into, I much prefer fun or goofy shit as opposed to sweating my dick off just to keep up. And see, that's kind of the problem for a lot of like more casual Crucible players, is they feel like to even compete or have a decent time in Crucible, they need to be sweating, they need to know what the meta is, they need to know all of this stuff, otherwise they're just gonna get bodied. And that sucks. There are some people who do really want to play Crucible, but they're just not interested in rocking Immortal and all this other stuff just to compete. Borealis says Crucible needs more fun-based game modes. Everyone's sweating their heads off and killing the actual fun value of Crucible. You know, I do think that Crucible used to be more casual, and I don't think that anyone would really argue with that, whether you're talking about back in D1 or even just vanilla D2. Crucible probably did used to be more casual, and I think that Bungie has kind of stripped some of the fat off of Crucible, which has its benefits, but I think it has also kind of pushed the game in a more competitive direction universally. Whether that was their intention or not, it's definitely felt by the player base, you know? But yeah, TLDR, I think something like combined arms or just more fun, wacky game modes would be amazing for the game. And I know it's not as simple as just bring back combined arms, port the maps over. Like, I know it's not that simple. Honestly, something like this would probably be a wider expansion change or a wider seasonal change, but clearly there's an audience for it, and I think it's definitely worth looking into. Anyway, really quick, let's talk about Season of the Deep and the new dungeon, Ghosts of the Deep. Now, I haven't had a chance to really talk to anyone about this on YouTube since I've just been really busy, but I do want to quickly just give my thoughts on the season as of now and the new dungeon. I think Season of the Deep so far is amazing stylistically and aesthetically. I may be biased because I love animals and I love biology, so a lot of the concepts in the season are just fascinating to me. But man, the armor looks really great so far, really unique. The weapons look great. The return of Taken weapons is very welcome. I haven't gotten to try fishing yet, yet, and I actually had some people asking for a fishing stream, and I kind of want to do it just because I think it'd be fun, just relaxed, chill type of thing. If you want me to do a fishing stream, let me know, maybe we'll do it. From the glimpses I've seen of fishing, it looks fun, and I got the chance to run Ghosts of the Deep last night. Yeah, there we go. Nice.
Oh, get it. Dude, get it.
Oh shit!
What did I miss?
Oh.
Son of a bitch.
I fade into darkness, and the world begins to fade.
Literally.
I'm just gonna get another rocket launcher. Just imagine the Vine boom sound effect every time her arm clips through her body.
The best part is I know exactly what you're fucking talking about.
Yeah, like that.
My fucking mind.
There we go. No light speed. I have some thoughts on it. It's a really good dungeon. I really like it generally. I think the theme of the dungeon is great. I think bringing back the Lucian Hive past Witch Queen is really great. I was worried they were just going to kind of forget about them, but I'm glad they're back. Hive Guardians, of course, are always a treat to fight. And spoilers for the ending of the dungeon. If you don't want to get spoiled, just like skip forward, I don't know, 30 seconds. But at the end of the dungeon, you find Oryx's corpse, which is really cool. I know there are some logistical issues with how the corpse actually got there, but I do feel like at the end of the day, we killed Oryx, he was floating towards Saturn. Is him landing on Titan when he was aimed for Saturn a bit of a logical fallacy? Yeah, it probably is, but I'm willing to kind of suspend my disbelief a little bit here because Titan is a moon of Saturn. At least he didn't end up on like Io, you know? Like that wouldn't have made any sense whatsoever. But stumbling across Oryx's body at the depths of the Titan oceans, that was really cool. I do also think it's really interesting because back in Vanilla D2, if you went to Titan on patrol and went to a certain location, there was a big window, and if you looked outside the window for long enough, you would see the silhouette of like a massive worm thing. And that was pretty much never touched on from Bungie or anywhere else in the game. I think Drifter may have referred to the thing as the long boy in the soup once, but that was about it. And I remember a fan theory back then that was Oryx's worm, and that Oryx crash landed on Titan, and his worm was just cruising around in the methane oceans. And while that is not confirmed, they do make it a point in the lore, seemingly, that Oryx's worm is not there, and he is on Titan. So I think it'd be really cool if Bungie kind of retroactively canonized that fan theory that that big silhouette was Oryx's worm the whole time, because he's on Titan and his worm's not there. I just think that's really interesting. I don't actually think Oryx is going to come back, but there's just a lot of neat story threads here. It does call into question though that if Oryx ever does come back, then Savathun's 2 Truths and 2 Lies game may not be totally correct, because I believe Donovan was telling me the other day that in one of her 2 Truths and 2 Lies, she says the Taken King will rise again, which we all kind of debunked as a lie and more of a tongue-in-cheek reference by Bungie to King's Fall returning. The power to move worlds will soon be yours, which seems to be true after the Root of Nightmares raid. Io, Titan, and Mercury are in my care, which seems to be false, and the Witness returned Mars to your system, which seems to be true. If the Taken King comes back in any form, that kind of breaks that a little bit, unless we're wrong about who's in control of the planets, but I don't think we're wrong about that. Anyway, it's just something to think about. The armor from the dungeon is great. The weapons look really cool, although I've only gotten the rocket launcher. My one big complaint about the dungeon, 2 big complaints, but one's much more minor. The minor complaint is that I feel like it's going to drag on a little bit and repeat clears, and by drag on, I specifically mean that first bridge section between the first encounter and the second encounter where you're like underwater. Now, to be fair, we were looking for all the calcified fragments, but I am a little worried that upon repeat clears, it'll drag on a little bit. That's kind of my problem with Grasp of Avarice. I don't really like how long that dungeon feels upon repeat clears. And my other larger complaint that I think most people share is that the bosses are spongy as hell, especially the first guy, Ekthar. He takes so much damage, and it doesn't help that your damage options are a little limited because of how close you two are for the entire fight. But man, he has a massive health pool. I was shocked. We had 3 people doing like decent damage. Like, we were not slacking, and that took a while. The final boss isn't as bad. She has a bit less health, it seems, but she's also at a range, so you can use more precision weapons, you know, Taipan, stuff like that. So she didn't seem as bad. I'm not looking forward to soloing this dungeon. I'm gonna try. Overall, very good dungeon. Definitely one of the better ones. Each dungeon seems to be getting better, to be honest. I just spilled water all over myself. Anyway, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about RNG in Destiny. If you don't know what RNG is, somehow, it's random number generation. So specifically, RNG comes into play when you're trying to get the exact roll you want for a weapon because you need to get all the right perks that you want, or raid exotics, things like that. Now, I had made a community post asking if you all missed more RNG loot drops in Destiny. For example, does focusing take some of the excitement away from just getting loot in the game? And after almost 15,000 votes, 46% of you said yes, I do miss it, 37% of you said no, I don't miss it, and 17% of people had no opinion on the matter. Now, I asked this question because I've had this feeling for a while that loot in Destiny just isn't really that exciting anymore. And I may be biased because I played through all of Destiny 1, and I have very fond memories of loot specifically in Destiny 1 because RNG back then was a bitch. I mean, if you wanted the exact weapon that you wanted in Destiny 1, you would be grinding for hours, probably days. And now, I know to some people right now I'm saying that and you're like, God, that sounds horrible, but I really liked it because it gave me a reason to keep playing and keep coming back to get the exact thing that I want. Now, we still have that in D2, but I would argue we have it to a much lighter degree. And in some areas, it's actually better now. Like, we have more things to go out and chase. But over the last few years, I keep getting this feeling that the game is very nice to you in terms of RNG. And again, I'm biased because back in Destiny 1, it was brutal. You could decrypt a legendary engram and half the time you'd get a rare. Like, you were lucky if you got a legendary. That was not good. But man, the satisfaction, and same with exotics, like you could get a legendary out of an exotic, I believe. I think that was a thing that could happen. But there was no bad luck protection. There was nothing. It was just decrypt engrams until you get what you want, or get lucky from a Nightfall, or get lucky from a Crucible match. While that sucked sometimes, I would be lying if I didn't say that there was something special about finally getting the exact thing you want. There's a reason there's so many clips of people getting Gallarhorn and just losing their mind. And I feel like the only thing we really have that for nowadays is the raid exotics. I mean, honestly, even if you're someone who really cares about your god rolls for like Crucible or PvE or whatever, I feel like getting exact god rolls recently has been less exciting than it used to be for one reason or another. And now let me also make it very clear, I'm not saying we should go back to the Destiny 1 ways of doing it. That was far too punishing for the average player. But I think there's a middle ground somewhere in there that would maybe make loot a little more exciting. I won't comment on this too much further, but I just thought this was an interesting statistic and something that has been on my mind for a while. I'm not going to sit here and say that anything should really be changed, because quite honestly, I don't know what the player base as a whole wants. Anyway, before I get out of here, I want to share some clips with you guys from around the community. If you want to submit clips, you can go down to the Discord, and if you toss stuff in the clips and highlights chat, there's a chance they could appear in one of these videos. But speaking of RNG, Yver shows us some godly red border RNG while focusing some hand cannons. Next up, Nezarec, Final God of Pain, has an incredible Crucible play in what I believe is Trials. The thing that I think is so crazy about this is how close he gets to dying, and then the trip mine knife of all things coming in clutch and killing the second dude from behind him before he could finish him off. I've never seen a trip mine knife used like that before. I'm gonna choose to believe that that was intentional. Finally, Kawaii Ender Girl Bow Main, great name, has a really unfortunate mishap with a barrier knight. As always, here's some really cool art from around the Discord as well that I wanted to share with you all. And sorry again, it's been so long since the last video. The Nuzlocke just took a really long time to make. Go check that out, by the way, if you haven't already. I'm so proud of it. The full version of the Nuzlocke, which is just all 3 episodes stitched together, will be uploaded at some point, maybe towards the end of this week. I'm also going to add some behind the scenes, just like goofy shit at the end of it if you want to see that. And then we got a solo Ghost of the Deep, or try to solo Ghost of the Deep. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it, but watch out for that stream. If enough of you want it, maybe we'll do a fishing stream. And then we got some really goofy raid videos planned for after that I'm very excited about. But anyway, if you made it to the end, I truly appreciate that. I hope you're having a great day, night, or whatever it is. And until next time, Guardians, goodbye.